we may need to add an element or two in there that talks to what the garrison's plan is for bringing any particular MDEP down or up, because there's some that did go up in MDEPs. But in the aggregate, where's the garrison in terms of managing their manpower to their 13 TDA? We're looking at controllable spending. These would be things that we own, BOSS funds, SRM funds, 121 in some cases, because G3, we're a pass-through. The command is generally a pass-through on some accounts. And we have owners external to the program, that are external to the command, that actually resource those programs. And we normalize for inflation buy-ins. And the point to make there is that when we develop the baseline numbers for FY 12, we will be using, Mitch has a very detailed audit trail of what we do to adjust each garrison, up or down, depending on what's going on at that garrison or what went on that's a sustaining mission in the prior year. As an example, let's look at Fort Lee as an example. When we built the FY10 baseline number, we used their prior year execution. We adjusted for inflation. We normalized out all their one-times. And then we annualized their growth. Because as you're aware, BRAC sites, most of their growth came on in phases. And most of that phase was in the fourth quarter of the ending year. And so you only have a quarter's worth of BRAC growth cost in your execution numbers. So you can't just take execution and match it against the next year and say, wow, why'd you go up 30%? Well, if you do that, you've left off a big hunk of change that you've had to annualize the cost of your BRAC. So we annualize costs in there where there is validated or directed growth. The ASAP program, again, most garrisons won't have an annual cost in their execution numbers for FY 11 as we end the year. So we're going to have to annualize that cost. So it gives you a baseline to start from to do your comparisons. And there is you won't see that on these spend plans. You'll see that number on the spend plan. When we put down there what their base number is, the process goes is that Mitch does his audit trail, and it is an audit trail. There is a line item for every up or every down at a garrison. So you'd be able to look and see literally what we increased for storm damage. We would have zeroed that out at a garrison because that's a one-time cost. BRAC growth, you would see it as a plus up, and you would see it annualized. So you would be able to see every single line item, and Mitch will make that available to you so that you know what is behind the baseline number. So that when you start working with the garrisons to validate what the baseline number is, that you know what's in that number. So you'll see that as part of what we develop and that you have your hands on when you start working with the garrisons. Assumptions we've made is no buy heads for FY12. These would be FY11 contracts that cross into the fiscal year. Right now we have no commitment that we're going to get those funded. It generates a bow wave view for going into FY12 that the garrisons are going to have to deal with. Or hopefully that will get funded before the end of the fiscal year. That's still a possibility also. We're going in assuming this is no RIF authority. RD has already gone forward to the CG and asked for RIF authority, and the RD turned him down. So the assumption is we're going to manage our workforce by attrition, VSIP VERA, placement of excess people, both internally at a garrison or across garrisons. And then we're going to try to get to our glide path that way. And again, I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm just telling you what the rules are. Okay, the facts of how that executes will bear itself true when we actually lay it on the table and we see that Fort Drum has to get rid of 200 people and they only get rid of 50. So, and then someone will make a decision whether or not that's a relevant course of action not to include RIF in the package. We're not going to do any insourcing or outsourcing. I mean, it is just way too volatile a resource environment. I think that anybody's going to do any insourcing or outsourcing. Both CMEs and civilian authorizations are both on the cut block right now. So I doubt we're going to see any significant movement in insourcing or outsourcing.
Having said that, I think functional is going to anticipate that if we're driving the FTE number on the TDA numbers down, that you're going to see bulges in the contracted requests from the garrisons. whether they call it insourcing or not, you're gonna find them saying, I can't do it with the current level, so I need to contract out supplemental help. And that's, so it's gonna be the Pillsbury Doughboy who swishes and bulges out in a different direction. We have to be sensitive to know that that's what's going on each one of the garrisons. It says, yeah, they're gonna be able to meet their civilian pay targets, but only at the expense of a non-pay bill.
Yeah, so when you review a contract and you get that cover sheet that comes in with it, it's an option year renewal on the contract, and you see them increase their CMEs by 15 or 20. And it happens to coincidentally match with the number of, civilian execution reductions they're seeing. That's a red flag. That's something you're going to have to look at and be able to validate as to why you're seeing contract CME growth in the program. I think dollars is going to constrain that problem significantly. We are taking a 15% reduction, and that is the last assumption there, and it really is a pretty safe assumption. We are going to take a 15% monetary reduction to our FY11 base number. And that's our base number. Okay, so stand by for what that really means in terms of, I may have taken a 15% cut last year, and you may be looking at another 20 or 30% reduction again this year. And so we've got to get to a point, and what will clearly come out of this is we're going to hit the wall on being able to sustain operational capability in some MDEPs. And it will depend on how the dollars spread from these MDEP POCs up at the headquarters level. They're going to be given a dollar amount and told to spread it among all of the garrisons, and in the end, that dollar amount may again will be above 15% of an aggregate reduction. And it's going to this is probably going to be one of the first years we get to the point where we're going to have to say, I can't do something. I can't imagine how we're going to sustain what we're doing, particularly in our non-pay arena, with the reductions from implementation. I see my staff filling out the majority of this from data executed or developed or delivered directly from the garrison. There are a couple of pieces on here that the RDS was specific about that he wanted to see on here that we probably will have to get from the garrisons. It's detailed level execution data like for GSA vehicles. Well, all that data is available to us in the system. Normally we don't track it in a requirements document. We're looking at pay, utilities, contracts, and then all other generally is how we group stuff. But so anyway, let me, just on this first page, we're going to talk this first page only because the second page is really a supporting document. I'm going to start you off with the TDA. What you're going to see on here right now is 2 blocks. I expect that to probably reduce down to 1 block at some point in time whenever we get agreement up at the headquarters between the D6 and the garrisons on what the hell their TDA is going to be. They're still disagreeing on what number General Lynch gave to the garrisons when they all conversed with each other and what the manpower people keep publishing on the TDA. So at this point we're going to have 2 TDA line numbers. One is the garrison provisional TDA, and that's what the garrison thinks they're authorized at. And then one is the headquarters TDA, which is what they think they're authorized at. The gap you need to know, and then when we talk about function, I'll tell you why. Now, we are also going to, as you see there, we're going to be looking at onboard strength. And we're going to be breaking it into several pieces for specific reasons. Onboard permanence, onboard temps and terms, and then total direct. And when I'm direct, these are the people that the garrison pays for. These are not reimbursable. These aren't OCO. These are money that's paid out of their funds to sustain these people. And then it's going to give you an over-under number. Right now that over-under is tagged against the headquarters TDA. I imagine we will probably tag it against the provisional TDA for the near term because that is what we are holding the garrisons to, is their provisional TDA. As we look at hiring actions, we are looking at the provisional TDA. We are not looking at the headquarters TDA because there's still disagreement between the two, and the latter document allows more flexibility to the garrison. So we're erring. All right. Now, we're going to show the number of vacancies in that program and the number of Visa Vera eligible, and that's the number we're going to have to probably get out of the HR folks when at the garrison level also, is how many people they have eligible for Visa Vera. These are all pieces, now I'm going to talk function for this section here. These are all pieces of information that are important to you. One is you're looking at hiring actions, because you're going to, one of the first things we do when we look at the TDA, or for the hiring action, is it on the provisional TDA? We look at, see if it's on the headquarters TDA. If it is, then we're okay. If it isn't, then we look to the garrison's provisional TDA. If it's on the provisional TDA, then again, we generally concur with the hiring action from a RIM perspective, as long as they are under strength. That's the key thing, and that's why you're going to look at this onboard strength. If they've got 10 people on board, and they're saying they're hiring another authorization, then the red flag is, well, why aren't you placing one of your excess people? If you, like at that first line on 301, if you've got 2 excess in there, I expect you to be placing one of those 2 excess folks in there. Because it's in the same ISR. Quals have got to be pretty close. You know, it's not that we're making a lawyer into an engineer. So these are the things you're going to have to look at when you look at these hiring actions that come across and make some kind of determination as to whether or not they're making a valid effort to place their excess folks. Visa Vera, and of course temp terms, you know, this is going to be an issue that has come up as to when, because everybody keeps talking this, when are we going to let temp terms go? And that is going to be a critical crunch point for a lot of these programs in terms of their operational capabilities when we say that. And so there's some key elements of things in there, both operationally and from a hiring action standpoint,